Okay, great. Let's go. So, Anita has already told you about Reverdy. So I work for Reverdy. It started in a stud here in Normandy. It was founded here because the owner wanted to have good food for his horses because he had some horses that were not so good in not so good health, etc. And then he went for looking for a solution. And then he started formulating his own food for his own horses. And then in 2000, Reverdy Nutrition Équine was founded. Then it started only with 2 days a week in the factory. And then progressively it evolved towards a full-time feed producing company. In 2013, we added the laboratory to it. In 2019, just before I came, we started the research center where we have a herd of research horses. So we are lucky to have these horses and to be able to do gastroscopies, tests, palatability tests, see what our food does with sugar in the blood and all those kind of things. And in 2023, we joined the Equine Care Group, which is a big group with clinics and other brands that promote horse health in general. Well, our philosophy is actually that the welfare and health of the horses comes first. The starting point for that is that is the basis of any ration, as they are herbivores, and we are obsessed by quality, so that we try to meet the highest standards of quality into the production of our feed, and that is our daily mission. So why and how can we really state for this quality? Well, our factory is located in Normandy, so we have one factory in the world, so the product is always the same. Our factory is dedicated 100% to horses, so no other species, so no cows or pork or sheep nutrition, only horses, so no cross-contamination. Our feed factory is GMP has a GMP certification, so that means that that's good manufacturing practice. So that states for a certain label how you should produce your feed with special recommendations. Our feeds are made without molasses, so without sugars, added sugars, which is a residue from industry. So we don't use any of these. We use products without genetically modified organisms. And our raw materials come from France. And we have a special label for that because our feeds contain high omega-3, so volatile fatty acids. And our proteins, which is also a question in the question that we have received from you. The proteins are rich in lysine, and our vitamins and minerals are of very good and high quality and all of European origin. So that's also an interesting argument. So this is more or less the rest of the arguments that could state of our quality. I've already told you that we have a research center. We have the laboratory where we produce our feeds, and eventually we could also produce medical supplements if we want to. But for the moment, we have the feed factory and the laboratory where we do the supplements. And of course, our feed is submitted to very strong and severe doping regulations because we feed a lot of racehorses and, of course, a lot of Olympic and sport horses in Europe and in the world. So we have very strict needs for that. Okay, well, we can go to some basic and equine and nutrition physiology if you want. Okay, so unnecessary to remember, but the horse is a herbivore. I still take a lot of pleasure to say so because sometimes I run into stables where horses are not always being fed as herbivores. That means that they still get too much hard feed and not so much roughage. So I prefer to say that it is important to feed the horse with good quality hay, and that this fiber supply is the feed of the microbiota. So all these little microorganisms that live in the colon, they make the horse live. So when you feed your horse, actually you feed the flora, and the flora is necessary to feed the horse. So it's really important to keep that in mind. So it all starts in the mouth, actually, where the grinding of the fibers starts with saliva, with enzymes that already start to digest. Then it goes down into the esophagus, which is very long, and that transports the food to the stomach. So in practice, it means that you have to take care of regular enterostry care, and of course promote fresh water and drinking to be able to go to this first phase. The stomach of the horse, which is quite interesting because it's quite small. It's maximum 15 to 20 liter, and then I think that's still a lot. I would say it's less. And it doesn't help the horse because there is not so much. Oh, I hear myself, Anita. I don't know if we can do something about it.
We can hear you very well.
Yeah, I hear an echo.
Ah,
Maybe. Oh, it's gone now. I think it's better. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So the stomach of the horse is very small, and that's why the horse cannot eat huge meals. It has to stay into small meal because otherwise the horse just can't proceed. The feed is then processed to the small intestine, and the mechanical digestion happens there in a very short time, actually. And we must know that stomach fluids are also excreted like continuously. So the horse has gastric acid actually all the time. So that's why it's also very important to provide hay and roughage all the time, because these acids need to be buffered by the hay or by water, or again, well, together. So that's why I prefer to say that the horse has to have an unrestricted access to hay, and that it is important to split meals. We will discuss the highly digestible sugars a little bit later, I think. So the small intestine, interesting. The volume is about 70 liters. It's only, well, it's 22 meters long, but the passage time is very short, so only approximately 4 hours. So in that time, there's a lot of things that need to happen. Enzymes, sugars, and fats are all starting to get digested there. There are absorption of minerals. So it's an important, it's an important passage before it comes to the colon. So in practice, it means that you have to give very small meals or frequent meals, that you have to look for smooth feed transitions, always gradual, and to avoid undigested sugars if you give too much of these, because they will be transported to the colon, where we will come now. So the hindgut, the cecum and the colon, where the microbes, the microbiota, do the job. So the colon is always very impressive. It's quite huge. There is a lot of volume in there. It's amazing when you do colic surgeries what comes out of this. But it's also very fragile and very subject to colic, of course. So we have to do everything we can to have a good flora and to keep it healthy. In the colon, there are a lot of things that happen too. So there is production of vitamins, there is absorptions to water, there is that will lead to the formation of droppings in the end, the production of essential fatty acids, which are necessary for the horse's energy, etc., etc. So the colon is really of our interest. So if we look at all these things, provision of hay is of great importance. I think I will keep saying that all the meeting. We have to keep the cellulolytic flora healthy. So that is the flora that breaks down the hay. And we have to provide volume so that the motility of the colon goes on and on. And in some points, it can help to give pro, post, or prebiotics to support the flora. So we have stated there are like 3 main rules in horse nutrition. These are very general, but just for tonight, it's interesting to try to condense them. I like to say that a horse has to have fresh water at all times. Horses prefer to drink in open buckets or open water tanks because in the wild they drink quickly and they drink a lot in a short time. So when the automatic drinking nipples or systems are not well adjusted, the horse cannot always drink at its ease. Sorry. And should you have automatic drink nipples or automatic systems, just check that your debit per minute is 7 to 8 liters, because then you will have enough pressure and the horse can drink normally at his rate. Salt blocks, of course, choose a salt block that is just simple salt, not one with molasses or one you just leave into the field with every kind of mineral you could imagine, because the control of what the horse really takes in is not so accurate. I would go for a salt block not so far from the water so that it regulates the uptake of water positively. That's the base for the first thing. The second thing is forage first. There are so many consequences of low forage provision or too much concentrate, so too much hard feed in literature and in horse health, that we can only state that forage is important. We have changed a little bit. In the past, we used to say, well, ad libitum, so that means with free access. But we have now said, well, free access, but regulated. So it's not always easy because some of the horses get put on weight very quickly. So it may be better to provide the hay into nets so that they can eat at their convenience, but not too much. So you could weigh the hay in function of, depending on what you want to achieve, considering his weight or his body condition. So when you have too low forage and too much consequences, you have behavior problems, teeth problems, gastric ulcers, colic, diarrhea, weight loss, laminitis, all these kind of nasty things. And we want to, avoid these, of course. Forage is also a role of mental health because the horse is a flight animal. It's naturally nervous. And the horse needs this feeling of satiety. So the horse keeps eating. I'm always thinking like the horse eats to walk and he walks to eat. Actually, that's really what happens in a horse normal behavior. So for him, it's essential to eat all day long. That's also why the gastric juices are produced all the way, because the horse is used to eat all day, and that's why it's important to neutralize these. And if horses don't get the hay at night, because the last hay distribution is at 5 o'clock and you're closing the gates of the stables and the horse hasn't had any hay until the next morning, yeah, that's really affecting his well-being. So it's important to keep that in mind. The provision of roughage is also important for saliva production, which also buffers the stomach. So you must imagine that every kilo of hay helps the horse to produce 4 liters of saliva. So that's quite a lot, and he needs to drink for that. So it's all like a vicious circle, and that circle needs to be positively influenced by us. So the forage keeps the intestinal flora healthy. As I just said before, you need bulk and volume to increase the content and to keep the guts nicely moving. The fibers stimulate motility, and of course that prevents colic as well. And let's not forget that the energy that is provided by hay is quite considerable. 2 kilos of normal or good hay are similar to 1 kilo of barley in energy. So the flora can ferment quite large amounts of fiber into essential fatty acids, so that the horse has a source of energy all the time. And the advantage is that there is no variation in the glycemia. So that means in the blood sugar levels he has in his blood, they keep being steady. So that helps also for horses that are a little bit crazy in their behavior. You don't have those peaks, just like when you feed sweets to children, you know, the first 5 minutes, they go completely crazy. So that's the same for horses too. It's really important to keep the glycemia steady, more or less. Depends, of course, of what your horse does, because sometimes you need a little bit of glycemia in your blood, but that's the aim of the forage. So when you look at the hay, we have several types of hay. We have, of course, in your country, I'm not so sure, but this is what we talk about worldwide and in Europe, first and for all. But we have hay here, first cut. So that's, normally it's quite mature. And then if you need lower energy requirements, you can choose more mature forage. If you need higher energy requirements, you could choose less mature forage. We have grass, of course. This is also one of your questions. It turns very quickly towards obesity when you let loose the horses, and that they have when the grass overcomes their energy intake. And yeah, we can assume that a horse that is really happy to go into the field eats much more than what he needs. So they could take more than 5% of their body weight in dry matter. So that's really crazy. So maybe it's also interesting to know that there is a study that was done on ponies. When you restricted these ponies and you just let them loose for a couple of hours, they were capable of ingesting the same amount that would ingest normally in a couple of hours. So just be careful with grass. There's also haylage. I'm not sure in the Baltic states you will have access to that too, but it's an interesting type of forage. The only thing is the hygienic quality is not so steady. It needs to be harvested in a quite correct way with good packing, with enough plastic coverage. Otherwise, you have infiltration of air, and then you don't have the work of the bacteria that need to consume the sugar in the bales, and then you have molds that will go into your haylage, and that's not so nice. Straw is not really a forage type, but can be used in some cases when you have horses that need to get rid of the weight, but then you need a very slow introduction of straw if it's ready to be fed, and it has to be very good quality and no more than 30% of the forage quantity, because otherwise it could get stuck into the colon and then you have to call your vet. So that's not a good idea. So little things about hay, quantity and supply. Well, as I said before, it is preferably to be given ad libitum, so that means free access, but then controlled, of course, if necessary, with hay nets. The rule actually is 1.5% body weight on a dry matter basis. So what does that mean? It means that the horse can eat a quantity of dry matter per day. And we set to their body weight, because then we have a nice limit of what they could eat. So I've made a little table here, which I took from literature. And we see that the dry matter actually is what is left once you have once you have pulled away the water. So for a 600 kilo horse, the 1.5% rule would equal into around 10 to 11 kilos of hay per day. So haylage is a little bit more wet, so that would be 12 kilos, etc., etc. And silage is not something I would recommend, but it sometimes happens. And as there is more water in silage, then you have to feed a little bit more. So more or less for a horse of 500 kilo, around 10 kilos per day is what you want to distribute. And 600 kilo is a little bit more. Some differences between hay and haylage. Maybe that's not of the biggest interest now. Haylage has a lot of advantages, as I said before. under the condition that it has been harvested in good condition and packed very well and stored without holes and leaking into the packages. And for the rest of the time, hay is also a good roughage source. And that's really true as well. The conditions of the harvesting of the hay should be ideal too. So no rain once the rust is caught. Well, there's a lot of things about that we can say, but maybe we come to it later. We advise to do hay analysis, so I'm not sure how well that is developed in your part of Europe, but there are bigger laboratories doing that, of course, and then you also need to do it in a specific way, just not taking a little bit of the hay from a bale on the outside, because that's the worst part, I think, of the hay. But we do it with a drill. So we drill into hay bales so that we have a representative quantity and really good sample of what the horse will eat during a certain time. So it's most of the time nice to do when you have a big batch of hay. When you have changing hay, it's not so easy. But for the bigger stables, or if you have a big batch of hay, you can perfectly send it out. And then this is what you would get back. So you have an idea of the proteins, which is important because then you can decide if you need to feed more or less protein in your supplements or change from feed range. You know about the cellulose. If the cellulose is too, that's like if there is enough fiber in your hay, because if you have lack of fibers in your hay, your horse might get a little bit runny. So that means not so well formed manure. Sugar is super important. We are running into the problematics of fructans and total sugars that are crazy high these last years. I must say that statistically we find more and more and more sugars and less proteins, which is not a good thing. But it's interesting to see what it does, because we also see an increasing amount of horses that get overweight, and possibly some links with some sugars that we find back into the range of sugar, because there is not one type of sugar, but there is a whole series of sugar we find back in hay, and maybe there are some problematics in the health linked to these types of sugar. So hay is definitely and grass, of course, definitely not a detail. What I always try to say, well, please, if you have next batches coming on, try to do a slow transition, because the flora in your horse needs 2 or 3 weeks before it is adapted to the new batch and the new, let's say, to the new fibers that it will digest, because they are different in sugar, different in protein. So yeah, the flora needs to follow that. Okay, that's rule number 3. When you have to feed concentrates, it's the forage first that decides how and what you should feed. The purpose of giving concentrates is that you have an optimal coverage of the basic needs in horses, at rest sometimes, in work, or when they are in breeding season. It's to correct the deficiencies in roughage, because roughage is very variable in a lot of things, like trace elements, like vitamins. It's never the same. It can be different from yesterday to tomorrow. And to ensure your horse gets the little dots on the eye or the pluses, and that you need to take the horse a little bit more on a higher level of care, then is the moment when you can choose to feed concentrates. Depending on the roughage, of course, there is a large variation, as I said before, in protein and calcium and phosphorus. So that's why we always try to recommend analysis. And then what type of concentrate should I choose? That's also one of your questions. It really depends. We will discuss this later, but it really depends on the physiological stages of the horse and of its activity, of course, and of his body conditions. And then we have, of course, the general recommendations in sugar and in starch. I will come to that a little bit later. Sugar and starches are, of course, important for the energy requirements, but we still want to say that we must not overload the horse with these, and that's why we have to split meals. And that's why we know that horses can proceed a maximum amount of these. And then otherwise, if we go up or above these limits, it can affect the health of the horse, like gastric ulcers, colics, excitability, etc. So what is starch? Because that's a question we always get, and our team here at the technical, how do you say that? The customer service, they are always discussing about, my horse doesn't have to have so much starch, etc. What I want to say about starch is that starch is, it's like a sugar. Actually, it's a chain of sugar. And your starch, the horse needs to cut it into pieces so that the horse can use it. It's not so much the quantity that is present in 1 kilo of feed that is important, or what you see on the label. It's what the horse can process. This will take some time, perhaps, if you haven't had the opportunity to think of this, but the horse can proceed a maximum amount per meal, and that is what is important. So we say for a 500 kilo horse, if we want to avoid any health problems and the horse is in good health, he can process with around 500 grams of starch per meal. So that's really important. And I could eventually make a little topic about it and put it on the website of the Reverdy Baltic team, if that helps. But this would be the key idea is that the horse can proceed a maximum amount of sugar without having troubles. And so it's not the starch that's on the label or on the bag per kilo that is important, but what the horse can process. And then it's also important to take into account the type of starch, because you have starch that is slowly digested and starch that is quickly digested, like oats. That's also an interesting question in the questions I got. So you have slow type of starch like in barley, and you have faster type of starch like in oats. So it's digested very differently, and we formulate our feeds with this in mind, with very good knowledge of all the type of starch that we use and what they do on the horses. We have tested it in our research center, so we know from our feeds what they will do and how horses will how the blood sugar levels will react to the different type of starches and the different formulas. So to be in a general rule, how much of the concentrate can we then feed? These are scientific recommendations, so these can be found in scientific literature. If you have a high starch feed, let's say you've got 30% or 45% between these, that means that you per kilo feed, that means that you have 300 grams per kilo, then you could only feed per meal 1.6 to 2.5 kilo of this feed. If you go lower into lower amounts of starch or controlled starch or lower starch, you could feed more per meal, but it's obviously not ideal. And then underneath, you can see how much starch there is in oats or in barley and what it allows you to feed your horse so that your horse can process this correctly without having health issues. So if you would give the horse oats exclusively, and oats is about 40 to 45% of starch per kilo, then you can only give your horse 1.6 kilos of oats if you stick to the recommendations. Well, here we have set it at 1.5 grams, so that is 150 grams per kilo per body weight. So that's a little bit more than I just mentioned. I prefer to state the 100 grams, so to be on the lower, safer side for the gut. If you go over these quantities, then the starch is undigested. It goes to the colon, and then you can eventually have a shift in the bacteria in the colon. They are not happy. They're producing lactic acid. The horse can get swollen. There is gas, there is colic, and there can be a colon that is getting inflated, that can move, etc. So this is why starch digestion has an impact on our on horses' health. I hope it's a bit clear. I know it's a bit technical, and I hope I haven't lost everybody, but I will do my best to put. Oh, I will do my best to put a little note of this if that's necessary. Oh, I see some interesting green lines in my screen. No idea where it comes from. So this is why what I just explained. Depending on the horse's health, you have different allowances for the starch. I won't go in further details for this, but if your horse has gastric ulcers, of course, we go beneath these 100 grams per 100 kilo live weight per meal. We do half of it so that we are sure that the horse proceeds the starch correctly. And it's even more true for metabolic diseases as laminitis. We go down to very low amounts, like 15 grams per 100 kilo body weight. So that's very little. So we have to fraction. If the horse has high energy requirements, like for Cushing horses, for example, that have PPID, and that's a metabolic disease, and that need to gain weight, but they cannot eat so much starch. That's quite difficult. So we are with a lot of questions in our heads when we need to feed these horses. Okay. Different needs, yes. Overweight horses, that's what I just said. It's different. Then you have to decrease energy intake, more in exercise. Just put attention to the sugars in the hay. We can work with hay nets and hay dispensers. And on the other hand, we have horses with high energy needs. And then we have to increase the number of meals, of course, and to be sure, watch out for the starch guideline. And we can also replace the starch, which gives a lot of energy, by a good vegetable oil, for example, the omega oil that we have formulated. And we have to choose a good concentrated energy source. So yeah, there's a lot of things we can say about all these horses that are all different. So the performance horse in a nutshell, I'm not sure we have the time to go through this in detail, but since we are on this page, roughage is what I mentioned before. We need to measure and to see what's in your hay to make a very good advice. So measuring what it contains is very valuable. Protein, interesting question. We will go through that, I think, in the questions. There are higher needs for younger horses or horses that are in sport and need recuperation, but otherwise in sport horses, the protein need is not excessively high, so don't overfeed your sport horses with a lot of protein. The energy, it depends on the spirit of the horse, on how the hay is providing the energy. And of course, minerals and vitamins need to be raised when your horse performs. And of course, salt is important to regulate the water intake, and not necessarily to be forgotten, but very essential. Water is to be provided like between 40 and 70 liters sometimes per day for bigger horses. So don't underestimate it and keep the 7 to 8 liters per
Es
minute.
ieliku mazgāties, to pēc tam iedošu, ka viņš nomazgāsies. Bet viņš tagad ir karsts.
Oh, that's interesting. The water, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the water, be sure that your water debit is about 7 to 8 liters per minute if you have an automatic water dispenser. And what's important for these last couple of slides is to monitor the body condition of your horse. So weighing is not always possible, but you can check the horse yourself. There are a lot of videos on YouTube how you can assess body condition properly and how to be sure you follow them up correctly. You should do this every 4 weeks, more or less, and then you can use a scale that is well known from 0 to 9 or from 0 to 5. And then keep in mind that after a working season for sport horses, it's normal to have a little bit less fat on or less reserves, let's say, on their coastal lines. And yeah, training is also, of course, very important. You can't just resolve everything with food. You need to train accordingly. So last thing about the performance horse, that's also a question we just got, when to feed your hay. Research has shown that it is better to give your hay 10 to 30 minutes before going to training. After training, you feed the horse, and preferably leave 4 hours between the meals, and never meals, sorry, and don't fast them before a competition. So, and be sure that you have unlimited access to hay, and don't fast them before a competition. That's true for racehorses. That's true for every type of horse. Fasting a horse, just withdrawing hay, even within transport, it's really not ideal. It has only negative effects. So just to finish with this short presentation, as I said before, we have well, a lot of products in our range that are formulated with steam, and with very high quality products. So we don't use any waste products from the industry, agricultural industry, only noble ingredients. So full grains, full cereals, and we also have a cereal-free range, of course. We have a lot of supplements for every organ system that compiles with very specific needs, and have been formulated with with the best available ingredients on the market. And we have the chance to test these at our research center. And just a little note before we get to the questions is that the pellets, we only make pellets because we have a very special, actually, we designed a way of producing them with steam so that we don't have to use any molasses, and we can then preserve the ingredients better. We have a homogeneous supply of all the ingredients to the horse, so the horse doesn't pick the little ingredients out of it, he just eats everything. And that gives more stable distribution of the ingredients. And for flakes, yes, I know a lot of people use muesli. I would be a little bit more moderate about using muesli. Mueslis are prepared to increase digestibility because they are rolled or they are flaked. So they have a high glycemic index. So that is more or less most of the time quite undesirable because it can contribute to metabolic disorders and other health problems. By the way, there are always pellets in the muesli. So if you look closely to your muesli, you will always find little pellets because they will put the ingredients that are necessary for the vitamins and minerals in the little pellets in the muesli. And muesli always, well, it's really rare when it's not the case, but there's always added molasses into mueslis because it can mask the less good quality of the muesli that is used. And yeah, the added molasses and added sugar will not have a good effect. Of course, it's just like when you give vegetables to your child and then you add 2 scoops of sugar into it because then he will eat it, of course. So that's not what we would want, not for ourselves and not for our horses too. Nevertheless, I must say that some of the pellets you can find on the market, not ours, but other brands maybe, use molasses eventually in the pellets too. So it's not because you have pellets that you are safe. No, you have to look yourself at the label and check what is in your label or in your product. And then according to what you read, you will find the ingredients. The first ingredient is the most present ingredient. The second ingredient is the one that is included at the second place, etc., etc. So it's important to read your labels and to understand what you really feed to your horse. Just take some time to do it. You will be amazed. Well, that's it for the general part, Anita. I don't know if you want to, I will stop to share this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there are questions or how do you want to proceed?
Yes, thank you very much for valuable information. As you said, it's never enough to talk about nutrition, and there is many information and specific information. However, I prefer to continue with questions sent by participants. But maybe if there is some participant having some very urgent question and would like to ask right now, then maybe it could be the right time to ask Aneva. Is there someone who wants to ask something? Well, okay, because each participant was asked to send in his own question, and I guess everyone is waiting that we are going through these questions, and maybe we can yes read a question and try to answer quite briefly.
Yeah, that's fine. Fine for me.
Yes. Okay. Do you have any of these questions, or you prefer that
Yeah.
I can read them?
You can read them if you want. Yeah, I have them here, but you can read them so that everybody can can follow. And otherwise, I will be talking too much, I think.
Yes, because questions are very many, and we tried to group them in sections like general questions. Then there are many questions about young horses, and later we will continue with some very specific questions. So the first question is about protein. How much protein is allowed to feed to horse per day? And what are the best sources of protein for a horse?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's not really. Oh, sorry. I've got the papers here. It's not really like allowed. It's more how much does the horse need. Let's say it depends really on what the horse does and on what physiological state the horse is. But let's say a horse of 500 kilo, this horse would need around 700 to 900 grams of digestible protein per day. And of course, then where does he get it from? Sources in for protein in horse nutrition are soya beans, sometimes peas, flaxseed, alfalfa, and then you have less good quality sources like sunflower derived products, those kinds of things, but we don't use them. So we use our protein sources mainly from non-GMO soya beans, and then it's important. Actually, I would rather change this question into well, that proteins are made into amino acids. So it's not quite the quantity. Of course, you need a quantity, but you would need the quality of the protein. That is more important, because when you have on your label like, oh, it contains 16% of protein per kilo, well, what does it say? Turn around your bag, look into the label, and look where the proteins come from. If the source is mainly sunflower or whatever, potato protein or whatever source, then you can already start to think, oh, it might not be the super quality protein what my horse needs, because the highest amount of amino acids, lysine, for example, which is the limiting amino acid. So what is, I don't know if you're familiar with this term. I'm sure there are a lot of people that come from different horizons, so I maybe just explain what it means. In short, it's the amino acid that makes how can I say, it's the protein or the amino acid that matters the most. So once you haven't enough from that, all the other processes cannot take place. So you have to have enough lysine to be sure the other processes can go further. basically that's the way of explaining it. So it's really important to have enough lysine in your protein content. So the quality of the protein is even more important than, yeah, of course the quantity is important, but if you have enough protein but not enough lysine because the quality of the protein is not so good, then you will still have a lack of protein or a lack of amino acids, and your horse will not look good, will not build up his muscles, will not grow nicely. So that's really important. So just take a look at your feeds, and there are a lot of manufacturers that won't put their amount of lysine in their food, and we know very well what the horse would need in lysine, since that is something that has been looked into. But yeah, that's an important question. So it really depends, and then if we talk about how can I say that, horses that are in work, then it would be a little bit superior, of course. Intense work horses would need around 1,000 grams per day. But again, it's more important to have the lysine in sufficient amount. I hope this answers the first question.
Yes, we have additional question in our chat. Can be lysine added additionally to the horse diet?
Well, it is put into the feed. You can't buy it like that and put it because it's not possible. But you can, of course, that's why you have to be careful when you choose for a certain feed that your lysine recommendations or the needs of the lysine for a horse is met. So a horse that is in work or needs muscle recovery will need more than a moderate at work horse or even a breeding mare. So yeah, you cannot buy it like that. You can buy like products like, for example, we have formulated the myostimul, which contains several amino acids, which gives enough results when you know your hay is very poor and your feed is very poor. But you can also choose for a complete feed where you know the protein content is already good. So it's very important to distinguish the amount of protein in general and the quality of the protein that you are sourcing it from.
Okay. And
I hope I replied well.
I hope, because one more question from chat is for how long a horse should stay without food, meaning hay or pellets after training sessions and competitions?
Well, as I said in the first part of the presentation, it's important that the horse has always roughage at their dispositions. So even if it's in a hay net, the horse should always be able to choose whether he can eat or not, because the horse eats more or less 18 hours per day. There are only a couple of hours where the horse doesn't, and that's when he's sleeping or when he's competing or doing other stuff. But so yeah, hay should be at their disposal all the time, and muesli, well, let's say hard feed is more or less 4 hours after training, not ideally earlier. Yeah, sometimes you can't do it otherwise, but that's what recommendations are in the scientific literature.
Okay, then we have question about supplementary food to horse. Is it better less than more?
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a good question. Yes, of course, overfeeding 10 types of supplements can not always help the horse. It's better to have a well-balanced diet with good quality ingredients that can help your horse with good vitamins, good minerals, instead of adding all of these things and not knowing what you're buying, because when you're buying with 10 supplements, you're probably wasting more money than buying one type of good food. And then you can always add 1 or 2 or maximum 3 types of supplements to the specific needs. Should it be for some reason extra vitamin E, or maybe something to support the flora, or maybe something to support muscles or orthopedic problems, but not too much. But otherwise, your horse cannot assimilate all these things together. So yes, definitely not. Supplements are there to meet a specific demand, and not every supplement will work if you mix it up.
Okay. I will try to read those questions which were not covered in a presentation. So, what, Aneva, do you think about balancers as part of feeding?
Yeah, I think it's important and interesting. It depends of the hay quality, to be honest. If your hay is a good quality and your horse is in a good condition, I think a balancer can be perfectly fine. But as soon as you have to have bigger energy, as your horse has bigger energy requirements and your hay is not sufficient, which is quite often the case, when horses do have to work at a certain level, then balancers can be a little bit complicated in order to meet their energy requirements. So yeah, it really depends of the case, actually. We have the cereal free, for example, which is a hay balancer, which can do very well on horses that have good quality hay that are in medium to light work, and then that's more than fine. I mean, they have all the vitamins and minerals. You have 2 small meals or 1 small meal per day, and that's perfectly well. So yes, a balancer can be a good solution, but it depends on what the horse does and how much sugar and energy the hay contains, and protein, of course. It should be really adapted to the horse itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Well, it's very interesting questions. What are the most common mistakes in horse feeding you have noticed more often?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a nice question. Overfeeding concentrates. That's why I started the presentation with what horses are herbivores, so overfeeding, giving them 5 to 7 kilos of cereals or hard feed is just a mistake, in my opinion. And then the worst thing is that the horse gets into acidosis because the bacteria in the colon do not work well anymore. So what happens is that people think, oh, my horse is getting skinny and he's getting runny and diarrhea. Oh, let's put up more. And then you have horses that end up to be fed with 10 to 12 kilos of hard feed and 5 kilos of hay. And of course, I'm exaggerating it a little bit, but I have seen that. So overfeeding concentrates is like the worst case scenario. Poor hay quality as well. That's really an issue, and it's getting more and more an issue. As I said before, I think maybe because of the climate, maybe because whatever reason, but more sugar into the hay, that's something that is also not well, because then the horse cannot use the proteins to build nice muscle mass, but the horse gets fat and gets like fibrous, with big bellies. You have those kind of pear form bellies, which you don't want. So that's also a mistake, because we can still influence the quality of our hay by choosing the right, as you know, Anita, by choosing the right species to give to your horses. You have a lot of type of botanic types of grass that can be good for the horse, and that needs to be formulated in a well thought manner. Inadequate mineral balance, that's also a big mistake I see, especially for gestating mares and youngsters. What can I imagine more? Sudden dietary changes, like from the other day to another day, poof, 2 kilos of new concentrates, or changing the hay batch without transition. All these kind of things are to be mentioned. And also maybe that people don't realize how important hay is. I'm still amazed by that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As we have talked previously, then in Latvia, it's very common to give oats in very many stables. And what do you think about oats, and what could be any negative effects of this?
Okay, interesting question. Oats, I like oats. I like oats because it's a traditional cereal. We use oats a lot in our formulations, but you have to make good usage of it. There are positive and negative things about oats, just as for everything. It's the poison that makes the dose. Let's just start with positive things. Oats are very highly digestible in the small intestine. That's quite interesting because for horses that need to have quickly ready energy, that's very interesting because it's quickly released, and so the horse gets a lot of energy. That's why in England they would always say you have to run the horses on oats. You know, they would fly away when you have the race horses, but there's also a negative side to that. So we first stick to the positive things. They are digested up in the small intestine, so for more or less the bigger part of it, so that reduces the risk of having them undigested into the colon, which is not good. That's what would create colic and acidosis in the colon. So that's the good part of the oats, that they are digested a bit more earlier. They have a good digestible tolerance, also for in young horses. Because they have quite high fiber content and a little bit lower starch quantity than barley or maize or corn, sorry. So they would let's say they would upset the digestion a little bit less than the other two grains. The palatability is okay. Horses like oats, yeah, normally it's interesting for horses that are a bit picky. That could be interesting. And then the negative things of oats is that, well, although they are quite well tolerated, they are still rich in starch, like about 40%. That's why I said you cannot give more or less 1.5 kilo or 2 maximum of oats per meal, because it will give negative effects on the digestion, like for acidosis, dysbiosis in the colon. It could give colic, laminitis. It could, the sugars that are digested in the stomach could attack the wall of the stomach, the mucosa of the stomach. There is an unbalanced nutritional profile. Let's say that normally the grains are quite high in phosphorus, so they are low in calcium and in lysine, high in phosphorus, as I said. And so you have a totally inverted ratio of calcium and phosphor, which is not so well for growing horses, but not either for sport horses. And they are very variable in quality. So they can have very big variations, and sometimes the quality, the sanitary quality, they can be contaminated with mycotoxins. So it's always a bit complicated when you feed that to your horse. And it's again, finally, a risk for horses that are prone to ulcers. So that would not be my preference in horses that are prone to ulcers. Especially when they are fed in empty stomachs, like they do a lot in the racehorse industry, but also in other parts of the world. That's just really not a good solution. So, yeah, oats are very interesting to feed, but yeah, there are some negative sides, definitely too.
Okay, thank you. Another question from chat is about probiotics overall. Do you think they are working? And if is it necessary to give prebiotics to horse if horse receives good feed?
That depends of the body condition of the horse. I think it's not always necessary, because if the horse has nice manure, has a shiny coat, has a good body condition, performs well, is a happy horse, it may not be necessary to supply the horse with pro or post or prebiotics, and these are different things. I know now she has put probiotics, but you also have prebiotics and postbiotics. These things are a little bit different, and yes, they do really work. There are a lot of studies that have been done in all kinds of species, and yes, they work. They definitely have a positive effect. We see that with our product, the Flora, which is very rich in pro and postbiotics, not prebiotics. That's a choose. That's a choice from our part to formulate it with only pro and postbiotics, because these were the best we could find on the market with the best studies. So that's why we choose to formulate it like that. And we see very positive results. As a matter of fact, we sell them a lot because horses gain weight, they get a shiny coat, they have the ability to digest the fibrous ration more. So when the horse needs to put on weight, the fibers are digested better because you supply also in live bacteria, so the probiotics. So yes, they really work. It only depends on the manufacturer, because you have a lot of variations in quality, in different types of probiotics. So yeah, that's up to you to make a little study and to compare the labels of the products that are available. But yes, there are very good results of these. And even in equine hospitals, we sell them a lot because we see that horses that have been recovering from surgeries or need to gain weight are systematically put on probiotics, and we see good results of that. So yes, definitely.
Okay, then there is one question in chat, and also one participant sent one question about Lucerne. What is the role of Lucerne? And I know that some vets in Latvia suggest to give Lucerne before a training session. And what do you think about about this practice?
Yeah, that's an important, interesting question. I like Lucerne a lot, but not so much in short fibers. There are some publications that have shown that the short fiber Lucerne, alfalfa is the word in English literature, can harm the mucosa of the horses that are sensitive or that have a sensitive mucosa. So if you give short fiber undestructured lucerne or alfalfa, it can harm the mucosa of the stomach and of the esophagus. What you can then do is give pellets of lucerne, and then that's up to you to decide how much, but pellets you can choose, or long stem lucerne, which is just like hay, but then you need to be aware of the fact that it contains more calcium, so that it will shift a little bit your mineral and your mineral ratios, which is okay, unless you stay on under a 30% of the total forage quantity in lucerne. So admitting you're distributing 10 kilos of hay, don't give to more than 2.5 kilos of lucerne if your hay is poor in protein, because it will also give you a lot of protein. So you need to be aware of that. And giving it as a chaff, so just to make the horse produce some saliva, is then you can probably better choose a softer type of grass, because, as I said, undestructured lucerne or alfalfa can harm the mucosa. So yes, good to give, but watch out for the way it is being prepared, because it has sharp edges and that can harm the mucosa. And if you use Reverdy feeds, we formulate our feeds with quite a lot of lucerne. So that's also for stomach safety and buffering, because lucerne has a natural capacity of buffering the acid of the stomach because of the high calcium, because of the protein, etc. Mainly because of the high calcium content. And then, so if you give 3 kilos of lucerne and you give 2 kilos of Reverdy, it might be too much. So that's good to consider in your head if you give Reverdy feeds, not overfeed in Lucerne, because our feeds contain a lot of Lucerne already. So that's what I want to say about Lucerne. Yes, but not too much, and then depending on how.
Okay. And let's talk about horse stomach health. There is question about how to deal with increased gas in horse stomach, and what is the best solution, how to decrease it.
Well, it's an interesting question, because I was wondering how she has, or he, I don't know, discovered that the horse has gas in his stomach. It's not so frequent, actually. Is it the stomach or is it the gut, maybe? Because the stomach is very little, so you can't really see if the stomach contains a lot of gas, and as the horse cannot reject gas normally through the mouth, it's improbable that it is only the stomach, but of course it is possible that there is some disturbance. Then in my opinion, it would be interesting to make very slow feed transitions to provide a very digestible type of hay. Eventually split the meals in very small quantities, and avoid too high sugar content, and of course not maybe as much as protein as well. But it's a very general question, and I doubt if it's really the stomach or if it's maybe the gut, which this person talks about. The best solution, yeah, it's not so easy to answer in this case. I think it needs to be defined where the gas is really, and what the horse displays in symptoms. For me, it's a little bit difficult. But should it be the stomach, then there is a problem of bacteria that would produce gas, and then of course the question would be to feed a very fibrous ration without too much sugar and too much proteins.
Well, regarding oats, there is question that there is some fact given that many people are afraid to give oats for their horses, fearing that the horse might develop gastric ulcers.
Yes, it is true that if you feed oats, these are digested very quickly into the stomach or in the first part of the digestive tract of the horse. So yes, it is true that oats can definitely develop the formation of ulcers, but then again, it's the starch content that the horse can process without having too much problems. Now that's why you don't have to give too much oats at one time. So if we see that oats contain 400 grams per kilo, you cannot give more than 1 kilo of oats for a 500 kilo horse per meal, and then you would be on the safe side. You understand? So that's why this starch guideline is so important to follow up. If you give 2 kilos of oats to a 500 kilo horse in one meal, yes, then you will, in the end, you would probably have problems if your horse doesn't have access to hay, if your horse eats the oats before having his hay, etc. If the horse has not so much water. It's multifactorial, actually. Yeah? Gastric ulcers is just not one cause. It's whole lot of things together that makes that the horse develops oats. It's not only the oats that will give the gastric ulcers.
And what would you recommend for horse who is prone to ulcers, and but horse puts on weight easily?
Yeah, a balancer would be ideal in that case. A balancer like cereal free, for example, which is not so rich in sugar and starch, and which enables the horse to get the vitamin and minerals, and which is quite high in fiber. And that gives you the possibility to split the meals into, well, very small meals, and it covers everything the horse needs. So that would be, it would be more oriented on a fat and fiber based diet instead of a sugar or starch diet. So you would have to shift a little bit towards a balancer, I guess.
Okay. And what do you think about feeding beet pulp?
Well, sometimes beet pulp can be nice. It's just we use it in some of our formulas because it gives some fiber. The only thing is you cannot always be sure of the quality of the beet pulp that you're feeding. There's a lot of problems with sanitary mycotoxin contamination on beet pulp. But for horses that lack teeth and that still need an interesting source of fiber, beet pulp can be a good solution. Whether it's necessary when your horse gets good quality hay and a good concentrate, I would say it's more or less, well, that doesn't make most sense to me. But in some cases, beet pulp can be a good added ingredient or added value to the ration of the horse, definitely.
Okay. Then now another participant asks, does feeding grain or oats in the morning before hay, does it make any effect to the stomach health?
Yeah, that's not a good idea. It's really important to feed hay before the horse goes to work. Or first thing in the morning is to feed the horse, because why? The saliva production comes along, the horse starts to drink or replenishes guts with water. There is water that is absorbed towards the gut, and then it buffers the stomach, the acid, etc. If you start oats on an empty stomach, it's just like, I think it's one of the worst things you could do for his stomach health. So it's really important to provide, even if it's just 1 kilo of hay, just provide the hay roughage first, always. That's really a gold standard in horse nutrition, is to provide hay first.
Well, then let's stick to horses with poor appetite. How to make such horses gain the weight?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I would say rule out any pathological conditions. So check with your vet what's going on. Why is the horse not eating well? I mean, the horse doesn't have appetite because of stomach issues, because maybe the hay is not good, maybe because there is another pathological condition. So first, rule out any pathological conditions. Once you have ruled out everything, so dental check, be sure the horse is not in pain. Well, rule out everything. Then you can offer highly palatable hay, so good quality hay that would make the horse eat more. And then choose a higher energy feed with eventually added oil, and feed smaller meals during the day. So it's really interesting. We had a mare not so long ago that came into a research center. She was an ex-racehorse. So she came to us and she needed to gain a lot of weight. So we have put her on a quite high energy dense diet, but we offered her 10 meals per day of very small quantities. And actually she came very quickly into good shape because she had the time to metabolize the meals. And we have automatic dispensers. So we put the amount of feed she needs. So obviously it was 4 liters or maybe a little bit more, 5 liters. So that equals to 3 kilos, around 3 kilos of breeding, because that's high protein. It's a little bit more energy dense. And she had it in 10 or 11 meals, and then the horse was just able to process it. So the more you can split up the meals, the better the horse will take the ingredients or the feed up and digest it, and it will be profitable to her or to him. What also can help is what I just said before, feed the horse pro and postbiotics. Oil is, of course, I saw there was a question in the chat. So my thoughts about oil are good as long as the quality of the oil is good. Make sure you have a good omega-3, omega-6. So don't take any sunflower oil or whatever, but choose linseed oil. Our omega oil is a blend that makes the omega-3/6 ratios 1:1, which is quite interesting because a lot of oils don't have that. You see very quick, good effects of oil if you choose a good quality oil. Rapeseed oil is also good quality. Rapeseed oil can also be a solution. And linseed oil, yeah, of course, for cold pressed linseed oil, which is rich in omega-3s. But yeah, those are the tips and tricks I would give to a person that has a horse with poor appetite. But there is always a reason why a horse has a poor appetite. Scope the horse, check with the dentist or with the vet. And then see what comes out. Run a blood test, and then see what comes out of that to be able to put weight on the horse, and then assess the horse whether if he needs muscle condition or if he needs a little bit coverage in terms of a little bit more fat. Well, it's important, and then you can choose the feed that would suit to these needs.
Okay, we have some general questions left, and then we will go forward with young horses. I see some questions about young horses, and we will definitely talk about it. But let's ask Aneva, what does she thinks about soy-containing products? Do horses eat soy? And what is your opinion?
Yes, well, if you feed the sole soy itself, it's not so palatable. So horses do not so much like soy, plain soy. It's not so palatable, but we use it a lot. Actually, we use soybeans, non-GMO. We are the only ones actually in horse feed in Europe to use non-GMO soya. But it's the best source. Actually, it's the best source of lysine, so of protein. So yes, it's definitely a good source. It's protein rich. It's nice. But if you make a homemade diet with corn, with barley, with oats, with soy, yeah, be sure you mix it up well, because horses don't like the soy so much. It's not so nice to eat, but it's it's a good source. Yeah, definitely.
And what do you think about further yeast?
Yeast, yes.
Yeast.
Yeah, yeast, fodder yeast. I think
Do you recommend?
if I get the translation right, is that the yeast like probiotics and yeast from beer industry?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good thing. We have that too in our range. You can always, that's something that is that can help the digestive system to be supported with, and it's rich in vitamin B, more or less. So yeah, of course, that's a good thing. We include it in we have it in our natural range, and we have it in yeast such as Saccharomyces cerevisiae in our flora. So yeah, good thing.
Well, then one more question about nervous horses. What are specific for these horses? What do you suggest?
Okay, we are always asked, why don't you have a supplement for nervous horses? Because there are a lot of people that would want that. It's difficult because in science there is not a really hard proven product or combination. There are some things that may work, but there is not a very clear ingredient or product that help the horses calm down. I would always say get back to look at the horse's diet. That's really important. Use a low starch feed or a low sugar diet. Check how you give it to the horse, because it's important to understand that if you give 2 kilos of high energy feed and you want to have the horse calm, that it's not going to work if you give just a little supplement. So it's important to use a diet that is not exciting the horse too much, so that the sugar level keeps being steady and contain and so that you don't have these glycemic peaks in the blood happening. And that's what what makes the horse so excitable. I would rather feed these horses on fat and fiber formula, such as the specific or as the cereal-free. We know of these feeds because we tested these in our research center that they don't give a high blood sugar peak. So my first reaction to people that would want to have a horse that's more calm, please feed them more like a fat and fiber based diet, like the specific or the cereal-free, so low starch feeds. And then, yes, of course, there are some ingredients like chamomilla, like some botanic extracts that would have a calming effect, like a flower of Bach or whatever, whatever can be imagined. But we haven't formulated something for that yet. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's clear. Then a question about dosage. How often should a horse be fed per day? If a horse gets breakfast and dinner, should it have a third meal?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's an important, also a good question. Well, as I said before, how as much as you can, as long as the horse has hay ad libitum in a hay net, or as long as you get your horse in the morning and he still has hay, then you have given him enough hay. And then the more meals you can give him, I would say at last 3, but that's not always possible. That's common. That's the good thing, but 4 is even better, and 5 is even ideal. But yeah, we cannot always do that. It's interesting because there are feed dispensers, as I said before. If the horse is in a stable, these are called eye feeders, and you can just put the ration in there, and then the horse gets it during the night, like 100 grams with 2 hours of in between, and that's really ideal actually, because then there is no glycemic peak. It doesn't disturb the horse. The horse gets his feed like normal, and he can assimilate it better. So the more you can do, the better it is. But in an ideal world, not everything is possible. Well, in an ideal world, everything is possible, but in the real world, in real life, 3 meals per day is ideal. Yeah.
Okay. Then is question about sport horse. Which supplements, vitamins should a sport horse be given all year round, and which supplements only periodically, depending on the season or workload? And currently, this horse is receiving hay and supplementary food mostly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I would say, just as for us, it's important that horses get minerals and vitamins all year round. So that's a bit of a logical reaction, because if the horse is in training and works, he needs to be fed whatever he needs to do that. Now, what I see very often is that vitamin E in other brands is low dosed. It's because vitamin E is very expensive. So what happens is that they include it with 100 grams per kilo. You can check the label. This person can do that. You can see that it will only be 100 or 200 grams of vitamin E, or even less. And a sport horse would need between, well, it depends on what the work level is, but let's say from 500 grams per day. So that means that in the hay, there's almost no vitamin E, because when it's harvested, vitamin E disappears very quickly. So vitamin E is something that that's something that we should really pay attention to. Yeah, in a lot of commercial feeds, there is not enough of this per kilo. So if you would give your horse 5 kilos of these muesli, he would approximately have enough vitamin E to have the amount that he really needs. So that's something I would say, pay attention to that. there are supplements. We have formulated the E-selenium for that. That contains vitamin E and selenium, because selenium is also very often included in other foods with the simple salt form. So just the simple form, which is not so bioavailable. And a lot of horses do not get enough selenium, which is a very powerful antioxidant, which is also needed all year long. So we have formulated that because we know that a lot of sport horses don't get enough vitamin E and selenium in their rations. So yeah, that's maybe interesting for this person to know. And otherwise, I would say that if you choose a good quality feed, normally the horse would need every type of vitamin all year long. And at some point, if the horse is really in extensive competition and you need to refuel the horse, or the horse needs some muscular support, vitamin E, natural vitamin E would also help, because it helps the horse to recuperate quicker. And for the other vitamins, vitamin C, well, normally the horse synthesizes it himself. So that's not always necessary to provide. Vitamin A should be in the forage, and vitamin D is what the horse gets from the sun. So that's more or less okay if the horse comes outside. And vitamin K is synthesized in the colon. And so, yeah, I would say pay attention to vitamin E especially, but normally the horses need vitamins and minerals all year long.
Okay, thank you. Well, one participant thinks that many horse owners still believe that a horse needs only grass or hay and oats, and all modern feed contains a lot of chemicals used in the growing process. And where is the truth? How healthy is to give this modern feed?
Modern feeds or actual feeds are formulated very precisely according to scientific rules or scientific know-how. We formulate them with a very strict how can I say that? A very strict guidelines, actually. So eventually as well, if you give the horse oats, or whether the oats are transformed in your formulas, there is no difference in that. I mean, we still have the restriction of a maximum amount of pesticides. That's the same for the oats that you will give the horse plainly like that. Then the horse that is processed into our feeds. I cannot speak for other brands, of course, because we don't use any byproducts. That's an important difference, because we don't use any waste and byproducts from the agriculture industry. I can say our feeds are healthy. We have a label for that as well. And that's why also we are used in hospitals and that's kind of things. So I would speak for Reverdy only. We have adapted the formulas to the knowledge and the current knowledge on equine physiology and nutrition. And we don't use any GMO modified organisms. So there is no point of thinking that modern horse feeds, ours anyways, are chemically dangerous or not, because we don't use any sugars, or we don't add any sugars. We have the raw ingredients. So we have a bulk of barley, we have a bulk of oats, we have a bulk of alfalfa. We mix it, we grain them, we heat them by steam, and then we press them together. Of course, we have some soya and some linseed and blah, blah, all those things. And we put the vitamins and minerals in there, but that's it. There is no chemical process affecting these ingredients. So yes, I would say it's even probably more healthy to feed processed feeds, because we know how much the horse would get into vitamins, into minerals, as oats are probably not so controlled as our feeds, are poor in calcium, are poor in some vitamins. So yeah, that's obviously no point of thinking that it is unhealthy to feed processed feed. But then again, it depends. what type of feed you feed. You have to read the label to make a good decision. Of course, some of the horse feeds that are on the market are made with ingredients that are less quality-wise good. And then, yes, of course, you have maybe unwished ingredients that you would probably not want to in your diet. But yeah, let's just remember that hay is the foundation, and then you have to read your labels to make it a good choice.
Mm-hmm. And what could be a long-time impact of GMO if it is included in products?
Yes, well, it's the same for it's already used in a lot of human, well, in other how do you say that, feeding ingredients for other animals, and we eat that as humans. So it's difficult to continue fighting against that. We try to do that because we think, well, we don't want that. We want to stay healthy, and we don't want any genetically modified organisms. What on the long term is not so clear. I mean, we all eat some beef that comes from the United States, which is probably grown with soya from genetically modified soya. I'm sure we've all eaten that. Yeah, what are the long-term risks of that? Well, we can start a debate about that. We try to not include that in our horse feeds because we believe that it is not what we want for ourselves and for the horses either. So yeah, that's why we have chosen this statement, and it costs a lot of money to do it. It would obviously pretty much cheaper if we would use GMO soya, but we don't, and that's why we are controlled with for that as well by veterinary services that state, okay, we don't use it. We have tests that are done on our soya to be sure we can still continue telling that we don't use any GMO soya.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's continue with topic about young horses because there is a couple of questions in the chat, and of course,
Yeah.
we have questions sent in. Well, general recommendations for feeding young horses. I mean, 3-4 years old, and who is going into light, medium training load. What
Yes,
are
and then yes, you would want a nutrition advice or plan, or what is?
I think that this is a recommendation for feeding. Yes.
Okay. So recommendation for feeding, yes. Well, general recommendations for these category of age is that you would have to have quite a high protein content because these horses are growing. Good omega-3, of course, in the diet, and good quality minerals. That would be the main focus of these horses, and to split meals because until a certain age they can still develop OCD, which is a condition that makes bone cysts appear or bone fragments appear. And of course, this starts in utero. So when the mare is pregnant of these horses, already very, very shortly afterwards, it starts at the very beginning. But it's important not to overfeed youngsters, so to have these horses not too fat. And after a certain moment, when they age and they reach the age of 3 to 5, you can do with a normal adult feed. And for those that are a little bit bony and still miss the muscle mass, you can continue feeding a bit more protein, like the breeding, for example, because some of these horses just have a higher protein requirements. Yeah, that would be my main advice for these horses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you recommend feeding pregnant mares and then later foals?
I would say the hay is the first thing to look at. So you would have to have a hay that contains a quality of good quality of quantity of protein. So 8 to 12% of crude protein on dry matter in the analysis. So that means that you can be sure that the mare gets enough protein. And then, of course, look at the lysine. Again, we know the recommendations for lysine. So it would be interesting to look on the package if it's another brand. Well, to be sure you give enough lysine. We have the recommendations on our website, or they can be found on internet. So good quality protein is important for pregnant mares, and especially during the last trimester. There the energy requirements start to increase quite important, and in the first period, the first trimester, when the lactation is really running, they have a threefold necessity of getting protein and energy. So there it is important to have a good protein feed with quite a little bit of energy in there, good protein, good minerals, calcium, phosphorus ratio, and vitamins for healthy growth, and of course to help support the lactation.
Okay, we have 15 minutes left, and I guess that we will not able to answer to all questions, but as I said, we will try to organize some brief answer in written format, but maybe we can talk a little bit about seniors as well, because there were quite many questions regarding senior horses. What are the main tips for older horses?
I like older horses so much. They have a lot of things they can tell you, and I must say that when I came to work into Normandy almost more than 13 or 14 years ago, I have never seen so many old horses like here, and I think it's because of the grass quality. So it appears to me that the horses, even though I came from Holland in my personal, where I was at veterinary school, there were not so many old horses as here. Here they are just sometimes left into the field with just grass, and they grow so old, like over 30 years. So it was an interesting field study. So then nutrition came into this, and then I started to think about all this. And I think if the horse gets old, it's important for the horse that he needs very easily digested fiber, and that's the case of grass. It's also a quality fiber, and it's full of vitamins and minerals. So I think that's more or less the secret why there are so many old horses here in Normandy. And I would also say to people that not every senior horse is the same. There are a lot of brands that have formulated senior food or senior feed labels, like this is for seniors. But I would say it's just like for people, not one senior horse is the single same. Okay, they have some main features. They would need a little bit more protein and a bit more energy, but and sometimes a bit more vitamins. But that's not always the case, because their energy needs more or less are still the same as for normal adult horses. So it depends on the type of senior horse that you have. Some of these horses, like 30% of the senior horses above 20 have PPID, which is a metabolic disease. And then 60% of these horses are insulin resistant. If I say the figures right, or maybe it's the other way around. I just have to figure it out. It's maybe the other way around. So 1/3 of these horses have insulin resistance. So that means that they cannot deal with high energy or high sugar feeds. So you need to figure that out with your vet before giving your horse a high energy or high energy dense diet. So some of these horses will do perfectly well with food for breeding population. So for example, the breeding will be just good for them. Some of the horses that are older will just be fine with a lambda type of food, like adult or whatever, which provides enough fiber, enough vitamin, mineral. And some of these horses will need extras because they have teeth problems, they get skinny, they need more fiber, they need more vitamins. So it really depends on the type of senior you have. And that's not always easy. You really have to be sure why the horse is losing muscle weight. Is there an underlying disease? So first check with your vet if there is an underlying disease. Is the horse healthy? Okay, then we can feed him a more energy dense feed. That's more or less the conclusion about senior horses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I noticed one more question, which is quite actual for Latvian situation because we have some seasonal impact, and quite many horses have respiratory problems. And what are your suggestions? What could be used to help these horses?
Well, first of all, these horses need to be outside as much as possible. And of course, it's in an ideal world, it's not always possible. If they are kept in stables, then you have to be sure you don't store the hay up like, how do you say that? Above their heads. Be sure you can have these horses on shavings and not on straw. Give the horses fresh air. You can even steam the hay. Be sure that when you steam the hay with a hay game machine, you get a little bit of you're losing a little bit of the digestibility of your protein, so it affects the quality of the hay. Still, it's normally to be said everything is to be kept in the ingredients, the vitamin, minerals, but it's not completely true. There is still a little bit of loss of protein, but you can compensate it by adding these in your ration, but it helps for the dust, and so it's good for their respiratory tract. You can also give haylage to these horses, which is already packed in the condition that it has been harvested in good conditions. And then in the type of supplements, I would say that there are some nice results with a high omega-3 supply. We haven't formulated a how do you say that? A supplement yet because we want to be sure we have something that really works. So we would want to test populations with really veterinary knowledge behind it, with blood work, with cell work as well when we do a bronchoalveolar lavage. So we are not formulating something with a simple syrup or eucalyptus. That takes a lot of work, but there are good results in practice with omega-3s in high amounts coming from algae or from cod or liver. Oh, how do you call these fish? Well, cod and codfish, like kabeljau. I don't know the word in English, to be honest. And they're like fish oil, and that gives but it's very not nice to eat and not palatable at all. So most horses won't eat it. So that's a problem. But there are very good results of that for horses that have respiratory problems, because in horses it is asthma, actually. It's not COPD as we thought before. It's really asthma. So it's really an allergic reaction to dust that triggers that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. And I would say that last question we could answer from the questions sent in is about horses who are in the pastures all the time. And what do you think? Is there any way how the weight could be controlled, and is there is need to give some supplementary food for those horses?
Well, horses that are kept in pasture all the time can, as I said in my presentation the horses that are in pasture can gain weight very easily. So if you know from your horse that he will set up weight easily, you have give him a muzzle or do stroke grazing. That means that you cut your pasture in more pieces so that the horse doesn't have the whole pasture, but you give him like very gradually a little piece of the pasture. So that helps him to not get overweight too quickly. And then, yes, the horse needs vitamins and minerals because, as I said, in grass it changes very quickly. So there is a great variability. And so we would consider that giving, for example, oligovit is a good idea because then you don't give any calories, but you still give everything the horse needs in terms of vitamins and minerals. Yeah, so I would not add any supplementary feed unless the horse gets in a poor condition.
Well, okay, if you have a little bit energy, Aneva, maybe you can look at two last questions in the chat.
Yeah, sure.
There is a very specific question about brand K-Flow, and they make pre-designed feed via steam extraction and micronization. Is the process similar to how Reverdy is made?
I have to look into that because I don't know the brand Keyflow, to be honest. So I cannot answer that question right now.
Okay,
it's always difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to say something about a production process because we have it's our design from our computers and our machines and our knowledge. So I don't know. Of course, we use similar process. We have some extruded barley that we use in some of our formulas. But then it's not steam extrusion. We steam them afterwards. So the barley is already extruded. We use the steam to make the starch more digestible.
Okay, and then how to help horse which is keen sand eater? I mean, eat sand.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting. There are a lot of publications done about that. We have these questions quite a lot of times. There is no really clear reason why they do that. They say that it might be a lack of vitamins and minerals, but it's not so clear why they do that. I would say make sure that your horse gets everything he needs in vitamins and minerals and see if the behavior changes, but and definitely try to avoid the fact that he has the opportunity to eat sand, really. Yeah, and more is there not to be done, unfortunately. There is nothing that can be done preventively more than that. And then to like evacuate the sand, research has shown that there is no significant results with sand clear in horses that are fed sand clear or whatever the brand was. I don't remember. I think it was that. But generally speaking, there are a lot of people that say, yes, it helps a lot, etc. So I would say from a scientific point of view, it is mixed. It's a mixed thought of if it really helps. And of course, colic surgeons would always say, well, please use this because they don't like to have all these sands on in their theater, in their operation theater. But yeah, it can help to give boiled linseed and those kind of things, or flax, well, little psyllium seed, but it's not. Yeah, it's scientifically not so clear. Let's say that.
Okay. Well, 2 hours have passed very quickly, and
yeah, definitely. I see indeed we still have some questions there, but
yes, but as I mentioned, we will try to give answers in written format, and I will send them to all participants which applied. And
Yeah.
And also there will be a possibility to listen to record. But today, I guess we should end up our online meeting. And for me, I guess my main conclusion is that we, as horse owners, should pay very big attention to quality of and availability of hay. And I have noticed that many horses in the stables late at night stay without any hay, and it's mostly likely on 6 to 8 hours, and it's a very wrong practice. So
Yeah.
this availability of hay for horse is very critical.
Yes, it is affecting their well-being and their intrinsic working. I mean, their digestive system is really affected by that, and that has a lot of repercussions on the other organ systems and on their performance and on their mental health. And yeah, I think it's important that we all switch a little bit to this side of their well-being. That's important. And then the concentrates and everything that comes next. Of course, you can always do better, but the basics need to be formulated very clearly.
Yes. Well, okay.
I see a lot of thank yous. It was nice.
So
My pleasure.
Yes, I guess that information was very valuable, and we could organize some more online sessions in the future. But regarding participants, I can say that you have all received this invitation email, and so if you have any questions which you would like to send for the Reverdy Baltic team, please feel free to write or call us. Of course, you have possibility to consult with us about Reverdy feed, and we can also ask something to Aneva, and let's keep in touch and continue to educate ourselves regarding nutrition and care about horses as much as we can.
Yeah, it is definitely super passionating and interesting. It's not so, it's passionating. You just have to understand what effects it is, and then it comes along.
Yes, okay. Well, thank you, Aneva, very much, and for paying so much time. I know you have a very tough graphic and many work to do, so very thanks. And in any
You're
case,
welcome.
in any case, good luck for everyone and good health for horses. And let's see what we can do in the future.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for everyone joining us this evening, and let's keep in touch.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.